everyone. So I'm kind of starting to believe that this series will never come to fruition. It will. I just feel like after this first video, everything's going to be smooth sailing. But I've been working on this project since probably February, and I am still trying to get this this first episode uploaded. So, I had done this earlier today, and because of technical difficulties, I actually lost all of that video. So now I have to do it again. So hello! I did record some of the main questions that we had, and we'll go from there. But welcome, this is Coffee with Penny, even though right now I'm drinking kombucha, which I make. Yay! If anyone ever needs some advice on their kombucha, let me know. I just started, but I at least have 3 really solid batches going, so if you need any help, let me know. But Coffee with Penny is basically going to be our weekly witchy talk, and we will be covering any and all topics on witchcraft, or paganism, spirituality, anything like that. And you guys are always free to post a comment below, reach out to me on one of the social medias, send me an email, and if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions for a topic, let me know. I am more than welcome to any kind of suggestion or any kind of topic that you want to hear about. This one is going to be on ancestors. And here is my ancestor altar. And first of all, what is an ancestor? To me, an ancestor is someone who is close to you, who loves you, who you love. And I know that's a very vague way to put it, but I include a lot more people on my ancestor altar than a lot of other people do, and that's okay. What you absolutely have to understand about ancestor altars and ancestor worship is that it is a very personal thing. No two practices are going to be alike. There are some basics to ancestor worship, and I will cover those. But basically, if it feels wrong, it's wrong. If it feels right, it's right. Listen to your instinct, listen to your ancestors, listen to the spirit that is talking to you. Because they are going to tell you exactly what you need to know and exactly what they want from you. So, unfortunately, a lot of people in certain areas and aspects of our pagan community will say that certain people, certain practices do not have ancestors, do not have ancestor worship. This is a complete and total fallacy. We are all equally human. We are all people. We all come from somewhere. We all have people who love us. If someone tells you that you cannot do ancestor worship because of your skin tone, because of where you're from, because of what you practice, that is a fallacy. Your practice is your practice. No one can tell you otherwise. And it's really unfortunate that this is starting to go around. I know a couple of groups on Facebook that I'm in are having a really, really hard time with this, and it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be an issue. I am an eclectic practitioner. I am technically a druid. I've been practicing for 20 years. I'm a hereditary witch, and I am also an ordained minister. And I specialize in interfaith and paganism. So I am constantly trying to bring the community together, bridge that gap, and let us all connect with each other. I actually have a free educational group called Weavers of the Web, and I'll link that below. And along with all of my social media, I will give you my email address, everything. It'll all be linked below after. So ancestors, we all have ancestors. We all come from someplace. And we all have people who love us. I include friends and animals on my ancestor altar. A lot of people don't. For a long time, I was taught only family. And then I kind of branched out on my own and made an altar that was a little bit more inclusive of the people that I love, and the people who are important in my family. And so everyone has ancestors. You can worship them accordingly. I do recommend having an ancestor altar, It's a really good place. It's basically a doorway. The doorway to be able to connect with those spirits and connect with your ancestors and communicate in a better way. You okay, Rose? Sorry. My old cat was trying to get down off the chair. So I like to have my altars be wood. It's just a personal preference. You can have them stone, you could have them on pretty much any surface in your house. And I like to include friends. I include animals, especially spirit animals and spirit guides. I think that's a really nice addition to any ancestor altar because they also communicate with you through that portal. And they are very close, well, at least mine are very closely connected with the dead and with ancestor worship. So I like to include them as well. Ancestors are great to work with. They are similar to deity. They are similar to general spirit. Anytime when you need any extra support, they're great for any kind of time when you need some extra support. They're also great as a general assistance in any kind of spell. I know a lot of shamans, especially shamanic healers, use a lot of their ancestors for healing because that generally tends to run in a family. If you are a healer and you had a doctor in the family, feel free to call on them, and they will guide you and help you through that time. If you need extra protection, if you need any kind of assistance and guidance, they will be there for you, and they are a great support system. Altars can really differ. Some people have altars, some people don't. I like to have mine. I try to always at least have an altar in my house, and then when I go out, I try to always pray to my ancestors along with my deity throughout the day and give offerings to them throughout the day. And for instance, for that would be I have these triggers that I try and practice with where if I see a bird or if I see a deer, which are both symbols of my God, I will actually have a prayer for my gods, and I will also include the ancestors in that. So it's just whenever I see those animals, I immediately stop, pause, and say a prayer. And usually my prayer goes something like, "Thank you, Mother, thank you, Father, thank you, ancestors, for everything that you do for me. Thank you for this day. Thank you for all the opportunities that you give to me. Thank you for always protecting me and guiding me. Please continue to do so as I continue to serve you." And that's what I say all the time. Whenever I give offering, for instance, if I have a sample of wine or if I pour myself a cup of coffee, I pour the ancestors a cup of coffee, or I give some of that coffee to my gods, or I give that sample of wine to the gods. And when I do that, I say the exact same prayer. Thank you for this day. Thank you for everything that you give to me. Thank you for all your assistance. It is really, really helpful to really practice that and get into a really good habit and a routine with that, just like with any kind of spiritual practice. And it just comes with time. It comes with time, and it has to come with it being sustainable. I think a lot of people really become too frenzied in it, and they want to do everything all at once. Whenever you feel that way, take a step back, center yourself, and say, okay, baby steps, one step at a time, and really grow your practice. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed. You're not going to be able to sustain that practice. And that's with anything. That's with starting anything. If it is an exercise habit or if it's any other kind of habit, do baby steps. I have a couple of notes here. So who can be included? I say anyone can be included. I include friends, I include old coven mates, I include my father, my family, and I also include animals. I have some remains on my offering or on my altar. My father's cremains are over here, and I also have some of where his ashes were interred. My father was cremated, so I have some of his ashes, and then I also have the soil from where that place is that we interred him. I have a couple of taxidermied heads. I have a couple of skulls. And I like to keep these here because they're good power animals. I especially love my crow because she is a great guardian, and she is one that I found. And unfortunately, some of her feathers are coming off, but she is one that I actually found in a cemetery, and she had been caught in a tree, and she had passed. And it was this beautiful gift that I found. And so I brought her home, and I started doing ancestor worship on her and started working with her spirit. And so she's a really, really great, powerful protector that helps me a lot in my work and helps anyone in my household with their work. So she's a great one. And really, when my cats die, they will also be included on my altar because they are a part of my family, they're a part of my life, and I've devoted so much of my life to them that it only makes sense to me to put them on the altar and worship them accordingly. So really, it's a very personal choice. No one can tell you if that's wrong or right. That's what feels right to me. Do what feels right to you. It really is a personal choice. If you only want to start out with family, that's perfect. And then maybe later you can branch out. But once you get the hang of having an ancestor altar and working with them in a very sustainable way, everything will start to fall into place with that. I was asked a question earlier about if we don't want someone to be included on our altar, can we dismiss them? And absolutely you can. You can, whenever you make the altar, make a boundary. Say, I do not like this person. I don't like their energy. I do not want them involved in here. Whenever you cleanse your house, these spirits are here because they love you. Can leave. But I do recommend keeping that invitation open because somewhere down the line, there might come a time when that situation, that relationship dynamic changes. And that can happen. I'm not super close with my mom, but I will add her to the altar. If she wants to be included, that's her choice. And if she doesn't, that's okay too. But I will still continue to have that open invitation for her. And if you really don't want someone, whenever you clean the house, whenever you cleanse the house, lay down in some salt. Lay the salt around your house. Lay red brick dust, black salt, herbs, whatever feels right to you to make that boundary. Lay it down and say, you are not welcome here. You are not welcome in my home. You are not welcome on my altar. That is a really extreme case, but I definitely understand when you're working with people who may have done you some serious wrong in life. You don't want to worship them, and you don't want them involved in this. And while I think healing is important for both of you, I do understand there are times and situations where you don't want them involved, and that's perfectly okay, and I think you have every right to say that. Some traditions will vary on this, but I generally wait at least a year before trying to talk to the dead, try to communicate with the dead, include them in my practice, because death can be a traumatic event. It's a very sudden shift in being, depending on how you feel about that and how your experience with that is. So it's important to realize that it does take a lot of energy out of that spirit, and it does take a lot of time to get used to being dead. So give them at least a year. The only exception is Samhain. So during Samhain, the veil between this world and the other world is thin. So they can come across and they can communicate much easier with much less stress and energetic output. For us, we're living bodies. We're constantly eating, drinking, and taking energy in and giving energy out. We're constantly having that exchange. Spirits exchange energy very differently. When they are here, it expends a large amount of energy. It's why we always have to be giving them offerings, always have to be feeding them, always have to be giving them something, because they can't eat for themselves necessarily. They don't exchange that energy in the way that we do. So at least give them a year. Make sure that you're giving them offerings. Don't ask them anything. Don't call upon them. Don't summon them. But give them that time and give them a lot of energy and a lot of support, because that's really when they need it the most. Samhain is a little bit different. I generally do a dumb supper. This is generally the plate that I do the dumb supper with. This is also an offering plate that I put any kind of offering that I have. If I make a meal, then I put the meal here as well, and feed my gods as well as my deities, or my deities as well as my ancestors. And make sure that your altar is very clean. I always have candy here. Candy is a very traditional Mexican, and even around the world, it's a very traditional offering for the spirits of the dead. My father also had a huge sweet tooth, and I have some of his favorite candies right there. I also give drink. You can give libation like wine, tea, beer, coffee, really anything. The sky's the limit. The thing is, you do have to kind of think about addiction. If your family member had an addiction problem, one of my family members did, so how I get around that is I basically give a cup of wine to the entire altar, or a shot to the entire altar, but not to her directly. If I'm working with her directly, then I give her something else. And so I try to work around that addiction aspect in a more passive way. But you do also want to celebrate their life, and give them something that they like. And addiction really it's a very physical thing, but it is also a mental, emotional, spiritual thing. So that is something to consider when you are giving offerings. Do you really want to give someone who's an alcoholic wine? Do you really want to do that to them? And that is a personal choice. That's something that you either will feel right or wrong about. And that's something that no one can really dictate to you. I do it now. If her mother, who is still alive right now, when she passes and I add her to the altar, if she tells me to stop that, then that's what I will do. But I haven't had any worries or complaints or any weirdness from the rest of my ancestors, so I'm going to say that it's okay for right now. But that is something to consider, as well as allergies. And allergies are a very physical thing, but if that person had a very severe allergy, and they have very negative connotation of peanuts, or strawberries, or wheat, then don't add that to your ancestral altar. Or if you do, add it to the general plate and maybe give them something separate. And so working around those two aspects can be a little bit tricky, especially if you don't generally know the person. And that can be okay too. That's why I really like to have a journal plate, because then everyone can take the energy of whatever they want. That's also a question that we got today, is will the food disappear? The food will not disappear. So what happens when you feed the dead, or feed fae, or feed anything, is that generally they will only eat the energy of the food. They will eat the energy that you put into that food. So eating a slice of pizza that is mass-produced is very different than eating something that someone made from the heart. And we also ingest that energy as well, and things taste better when someone makes them for us. Things taste better when we want to be involved, when you're sharing food with loved ones, when you're having a good time, when you're making food together. That is really, really important. That energetic aspect of food. It's not just about living food and clean food, it's also about loved food. And loving the food that you eat. And I think that's a huge aspect that a lot of people don't see as often. It's certainly not talked about as often as we should. But that is a really important aspect of having something on that altar that has been loved, and feeding them that energy. That's really what they're eating and what they're consuming. That's how the energy exchange really works for them. The other thing that you can have on your altar is money. You can have incense. I actually make an ancestor blend incense that I burn pretty regularly for them. That's a lot, and I'll cover marjoram and some other herbs in a little bit. You can draw them something, you can paint them something. Prayer. you can really, the sky's the limit. One thing that I do keep on my altar, that I try to always keep on my ancestor altar, is alabaster. This is a natural alabaster egg. It is one that I found down by the river, and alabaster is a great stone for forgiveness. So if you are working with trauma, family, whether it was childhood trauma for you or if it was anything like that, forgiveness is really, really essential. And this can be a really helpful stone to have on your altar and help reinforce the boundary of no one fighting. Um, what you can also do when you make your altar is you can clean the altar, wash the altar with chamomile and lavender water, and you can also add some essential oil to that. And make sure that you clean the altar really well, clean everything on the altar really well, and just make sure that everything is clean and calm, but also make sure that you are reinforcing that boundary that this is a safe space, this is a sacred space, and no one can fight here. Let's see. I also had a question about differences and prejudice of spirits. If we were prejudiced in life, there is a good chance that we are prejudiced in death as well, and that's really, really unfortunate. That's not always the case. Sometimes the soul will really grow throughout the death and dying process, and they will kind of lose some of that, especially if they're an older soul. Younger souls tend to cling to that a little bit more, and that's kind of hard to work around, but as I said, make sure that you have a good boundary, and it's a very strong boundary, and you ground that and anchor that very firmly. If anyone disobeys that, you are dismissed. You don't need ancestors fighting in your house. It can be really chaotic, it can be really hard to work around, and once that fighting and bickering starts, it's really hard to get it to stop. So having that boundary is really, really good. Also, if you have other races within your family, I'm of mixed race, so I have lots of races on my altar. Make sure that if they are, like, if you had someone who was a white supremacist and you have part of your family that's black, make sure that they are not involved in any working, because that's just going to be more traumatic for that soul. It's going to be more traumatic for you, and you can always dismiss the soul, but it's much harder to do so once all of that energy gets aggravated, and it's a lot of work. So it's best to just avoid that if at all possible. If you cannot, then laying that boundary, making sure that you have a really good calm atmosphere, but also making sure that you don't call those people together is really, really important. For instance, if you had someone who was a healer who happened to be pagan and someone who was a staunch Christian, don't call them together. Call your pagan healer for when you need healing, when you need help. Call the staunch Christian if they want to be involved with your altar when you need some advice or when you need to talk to someone or even when you need some protection. They will be there for you for that. Another note on having separate religions within your group. I have a lot of religions represented around here. I have Christian and Baptist and Catholic and a whole bunch of different people. And I try to always keep my grandmother's Bible on my altar. This is a 100-year-old Bible, and she has letters in it and postcards, and like it's just ancient, ancient, ancient. That's an Easter card from a really long time ago. And notes. And so I always keep this on my altar. I have nothing against witches using Bibles. If that is what you feel like you need to use it. I don't personally use mine, but I have read this Bible, and I do cherish this Bible. It's a beautiful book. And I keep it here because I know that my ancestors will feel better about it. They want to have something of their religion. It makes them more comfortable, and that's okay. I'm okay with doing that. Now, if you have someone who is strict Catholic and they're like, no witchcraft whatsoever and no ancestor veneration, nothing like that, That's okay. They don't have to be involved. If a spirit says no, that's okay. Leave it. I, again, would say keep that invitation open. It's always important to at least have a way to communicate with them. And again, if that relationship dynamic changes, then they are welcome. But don't have anyone on, don't force it on anyone, and don't feel forced to include anyone. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Prayers and devotions, I told you one. Another one that I really like, which is an ascensionary prayer, is I pray for the ascension of your soul. Very simple, very straightforward. I say it whenever I see a dead animal on the side of the road. I see it whenever I harvest, whenever I hunt, whenever I fish. I pray for the ascension of your soul. And it's a very clean-cut, simple thing that you can do whenever you feel like it. And if you are working to ascend an ancestor, and if they're ready to be ascended, then you can offer that prayer as well. When can you call your ancestors? Basically, you can call your ancestors whenever. They're there for you. They love you. Even if you were orphaned, even if you never knew your parents, knew any of your ancestors, you still have them. And to call them, what you can do, even if you don't know their name or anything about them, is get a prick of your blood, put it on a white piece of paper, or put it on a nice clean sheet of cloth. Cotton works really well. And put it on your ancestor altar. Your bloodline, your DNA, is that lineage from way, way, way back. It's your lineage, and it is what connects you directly to your ancestors. We are the house that was built on top of their foundation. Everything that we do came from them. Everything that we are came from them. Even way back to the very beginning when we were first starting to walk, that energy is still around. And I personally do believe in reincarnation. And if you go down your line and you're working with different energies and different people, you will reach a point in your lineage where it gets to be kind of a residual feeling. It begins to lose some of its personification. And working with a personifying spirit is a very different experience than working with just a residual energy. Every single being that exists has an energy trace. It is like a fingerprint. It's an energetic fingerprint. Every single one of those is unique and different. And that, if you don't want to work with someone, if you don't like their energy, and all you have to go from is the feeling that they give you, you can push that away, push it out of your boundary, and say you are no longer welcome here. And that is perfectly okay. You do not need their name to be able to push them out. It's a feeling that you get. And everyone experiences that feeling a little bit differently. Mine comes from the chest. Some people's comes from the belly. Some people's come from the third eye. It really all depends on how you experience that. But you can push them out and you can set that boundary and they will no longer be welcome in your space. You can also call them, as I said before, when you are protecting your house, include them in that. This is also their house. This is also their space. And they also care about you. If they love you and they want the best for you, then they will care about your protection and your safety. I prefer to have my ancestor altar out here in the center of the home. I don't like to have it in the bedroom unless it is strictly for fertility reasons. Lots of things happen in the bedroom that we maybe don't want to show our parents. That's a very straightforward thing. And it's important to keep that in mind whenever you're making it. Am I doing something that would feel awkward if they were like standing right in front of me? That maybe is something that we need to consider. So I like mine right in the middle of the home. I like it because they're in the center of my home. They're right here. It's easy to get to. It's easy to communicate. I can say hello when I go to work. I can say hello when I come home. It's like the first thing that I see. And you can also work with them with healing. You can work with them for love magic, for fertility magic. One of the great things about your ancestors is that they want their line to continue. They want you to have children. They want that energy to continue and to flourish. So for instance, I'm working with this woman who has fertility issues, and we are working with her, building her an ancestor altar and calling upon those ancestors to help her conceive. And so far it's been pretty successful, and we're really pleased with how that's going. So hopefully she'll have a baby soon. For love, if you are having difficulties finding a partner and you want the right partner, you can ask your ancestors to basically be a matchmaker and be like, help me attract a partner that is perfect for me, that is right for me, that will help support me, that will love me, be compassionate, be respectful, be honorable, and they can actually help you do that. I will probably get married on Samhain so that my ancestors can attend. That's a very personal choice. And my father unfortunately passed away before he could ever walk me down the aisle, so I would like to include him in that. And I will probably host some sort of spirit table where no one but the spirits and the ancestors are allowed to sit during my wedding. That's another way to incorporate them in your life and into your practice. As I said before, I'm always contacting my ancestors. You can contact them anywhere. Literally, your blood, your physical being, is a direct line to them. So whenever you need them, just call. Because they're a part of you, and we're a part of them, and you can really call them whenever. There's no problem in that. Offerings. We kind of covered that. You can offer them other forms of blood. You could offer them animal blood, especially if they were a hunter. If you hunt as well, if you fish as well, then you can offer that blood to them. It's a living sacrifice. That is a very, very personal choice. I support sacrifice as long as it is done in a very humane way. A lot of people disagree with that, and that's okay. But if you are using the animal for a protein source, using it for food, using any plants for food, it's always good to give thanks for that and make that into a very sacred time. So if you want to give that life force to something else, that's your choice. Ascension is kind of our last thing. Ascension is hard. As I said before, once you get used to working with your lineage, at some point you will reach a residual energy. I do believe in reincarnation, so at some point the souls start to recycle and they will be ready for ascension. What you can do in that is basically become a psychopomp. Learn how to do psychopompery. And usually that's done when a person is on their deathbed and you want to help them into death, usher them into death. The way I do it is basically 4 real hardcore aspects, hard and fast rules. Love, give them love, receive love, forgiveness, give forgiveness, receive forgiveness. Making sure that they don't feel like they're leaving anything behind. If they have any issues that need resolved, if they have any responsibilities that need resolved, being able to take those on, that's a really important one. And then also making sure that they don't feel alone in the process. And I know that sounds a bit strange because we come into this world alone, we come out of this world alone, and people will, that's kind of up for debate. I would say, as a midwife of death, as a psychopomp, that we don't have to be alone when we die, and I am more than happy to ascend that soul and guide them, physically guide them to the other world. But that is a very advanced subject, and that's something that I can definitely talk about, but it's going to have to be in a later episode. And there are shamanic techniques where you can astral project and actually guide that soul to where they belong. But it's very, very important that you give and receive love, that you tell them that they are loved, that they've been loved, that you give any kind of forgiveness for any and all wrongs, that you receive forgiveness for any and all wrongs, but also that you receive forgiveness for any and all wrongs that other people have done. That can be something that a lot of people will stick around for, that we can actually resolve. If we happen to say, I apologize for anything that has been done to you. We can resolve that right then and there. Responsibilities. For instance, my father was basically the sole caretaker of my mom before he passed away. When he was on his deathbed, he lingered for quite a while, and for the longest time I couldn't figure out why. And I finally realized that it was because I needed to do these things in order for him to move on. And so I took on the responsibility of caretaking for my mother, and I told him so. And within a couple of hours, he had moved on. And that's a really important aspect that I think a lot of people don't think about, don't consider, that sometimes we are just hanging on because we know that other people need us too. But it wasn't going to do him any good to hang on. He wasn't going to get any better. And so I took on that responsibility to free him from it. And that's a very deep and personal choice. That's something that only you can decide for yourself if it is something that you can truly commit to or not. I would never suggest making a promise to any being or yourself that you do not think that you can really keep. We kind of have to honor our word in everything that we do, in witchcraft, in our religion, in any kind of spirituality. We have to honor our word, and it has to mean something. So I always try to make sure that I am not making promises that I can't keep, and really considering what I'm getting myself into. Yeah, I think I've covered everyone's questions. I'm sorry that my other video got deleted. That really sucked. I was actually really, really pleased with it. One more thing that I want to involve. I am doing this because of Memorial Day. Memorial Day, to me, is a very somber holiday. It's to remember the dead, to go and clean the graves, to make sure that everything is doing right at the half point of the year, and Samhain is the other half point of that year. So I kind of try and make them, like Beltane and Samhain are mirror images of each other. I try to make sure that I am at least doing something for Memorial in the month of May. It's a good checkpoint, and it's a good way to remind yourself, hey, I need to go do some ancestor veneration. I need to go clean the graves. I need to go make sure that they have flowers or prayers or whatever they need. Another thing that you can do that really helps with spirit communication is I have opened this Rose of Jericho. This is a true Rose of Jericho, Anastatica hirohantica, and this is from North Africa. I actually got this one from Egypt. And this is the second flush, but the first one I did, and I actually washed my ancestor altar. This plant helps with spirit communication. A lot of people will go and wash the graves with this. You can also wash your ancestor altar because this is a link to them. And I've also added a little bit of gold, a gold chain in here, to really oomph up that protection and that prosperity and all of those good wealth aspects. And what else? I think that's really it. I do also add some other oil. I added orange oil, bergamot, and vetiver. Vetiver is a really good one because it is very, very grounding and anchoring. Orange and bergamot are great. Neroli are also great for uplifting. It's very, very happy. It brings a lot of happiness to the ancestors. And it really promotes a really good atmosphere for them. Some of the herbs that you can use, which I forgot to mention, is Majorium calendula, roses if they like. You could do lilies, depending on how you look at them. Lilies tend to be a negator of magic, but if you have a lot of Catholic family and you want to put Easter lilies, that's perfectly fine. Lilies, lilacs, anything really nice. Lots of funerary herbs. Rue is a great one. Tansy. All of these herbs are really, really precious to the dead, and they are very sacred. But I really especially love calendula, and majorium, because they are so bright and uplifting, and they bring so much happiness to the dead. And that's really what I want to promote with the ancestor altar and with my ancestor veneration. I want my ancestors to be happy. I want them to be pleased, and I want them to be as secure as possible and as supported as possible, because they're supporting me. So having that partnership is really, really important, and sustaining that partnership is really, really important. I think from what I've heard in our community, a lot of people will talk about making the altar, but not really how to sustain the altar. I try to clean mine at least once every 3 months. Depending on how much it gets used, you might want to clean it more or less, depending on incense ash and traffic in your home, if there's a lot of dust on the altar. Candies and offerings do need to be disposed of. Generally, if it's in a wrapper, I remove the wrapper and throw that away, and then just go and bury the actual candy, or I leave it out. I think for one Samhain, my dad really liked Peeps, so I went and got him some little ghost Peeps and put them on his grave. And it's a fun little thing that you can do with your ancestors. Whatever they really like, add to your altar. One of my ancestors loved Barbie, so I'm thinking of getting her a Barbie just so she can have it on the altar. My coven mate loved having a garden, and so we have seeds for her, and we actually have, when we went to her funeral, we actually got a packet of seeds each of her wildflowers, so we have those sitting on the altar as well. And really anything that connects you to them. My father was a veteran, and so when we did his funeral, they did the salute, and we got the pieces of brass. These are empty bullet shells that they shot for him. And I like to fill these up with herbs, or I even have one with some of his cremains and then seal it with wax. And these are really, really nice charms for protection. If ever I feel like I need that extra little guidance, then I go and I hold one and I pray over it. What you can also do, which is a really beautiful thing, is that they have these beautiful memento moris now, where it's a container. I'm thinking of getting an hourglass. It's a little container that you can fill with ashes, a little pendant or a ring, and they can also make gemstones out of ashes. There's a lot of really neat things that they're doing right now with blown glass and with compressing them and making them into jewels and all of these really beautiful things that happened in the Victorian era but have kind of been lost with time, that are coming back into style. And I really think that's a beautiful way to carry that ancestor with you wherever you go, and to really venerate them in a very beautiful way. They also actually do tattoos with cremains. You can do animal or human, and some states allow it and some states don't, and that's something that you're really going to have to check with your tattoo artist, with everything, and that's something that they're going to have to approve, and you just have to kind of find the right people to do it. But you can do it, and you can get a tattoo with that person or with that animal, and that also is a very personal choice. I am a little bit leery of it because potential for infection, just because ashes tend to be a very large particle, and that's going directly into a wound. So it's kind of a strange, it's something that I haven't really seen. I've not really looked into. It's not something I really have an interest in. But if you feel the need to do that, that's a beautiful way to keep that person with you. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have for you. I think I've covered just about everything that I covered in the other one. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm going to add all of my social media, my Twitter, my Tumblr, both of my Facebook pages, the link to the Facebook group. I will be doing both my Etsy store and the Facebook store, Luna del Sol, which is my brand. Yeah, and I'll include all of that in the description box. If ever you need anything, if ever you want to suggest a topic or have any other questions, please let me know. And honestly, come reach out to our group. Everyone's welcome. We're very eclectic. We're very welcoming. You can get any and all of your questions answered. We are very eclectic, so you'll get lots of different answers, and just go with the one that feels right for you. And we are free. We're a completely free group that you can just come and join, and you can either lurk or you can actually be interactive, and it's available to you, and you are more than welcome to come. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I will let you go. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. And hopefully this doesn't get deleted again. So thank you and goodbye.